All right, this is like the fourth time I'm recording this video because my camera stopped working 3 times in a row. So fourth time is the charm, I guess. You know, it feels like forever ago when I'd first discovered Netflix and streaming was this new cool thing and a way to watch all your favorite shows without actually having cable, outside of, you know, shady websites. Now streaming has been out for a decade at this point, and it feels like every single company has their own streaming services, each one with nothing you want to watch, or maybe like one or two things, and all of them cost money, and it's like it's no better than cable, and it's expensive, and streaming just isn't great. But I will say, out of all of these streaming services, the one that I find the most interesting is actually Tubi. And I know that's kind of crazy considering Tubi is like the weird streaming service that has all the really low quality and strange movies, but I think that's actually a sign that it's like going to be cool, because a lot of things that end up being really cool are cringe at first. Like take TikTok, for example, right? When TikTok first came out, when it first like switched over from being Musical.ly, it was cringe, you know, like you were weird if you were on TikTok. Now people are hiring TikTok content creators for their businesses. It's like, this is not sponsored by Tubi, by the way. But there's just a lot to like about it. Like it's free. It has live TV. It also has like a really good selection of movies and TV shows. Like it's got a couple bangers that like you just don't expect to see them up there. So like, anywho, the topic of discussion today is a Tubi movie. Well, it's not actually a Tubi movie. It's just a movie that's on Tubi. And it's called Colossal. And this movie is weird. Like it's super weird. A girl who moves back to her hometown finds out that she has the ability to control a giant monster in South Korea. And it's just like, when I read that, I was like, yep, this is what I'm watching today with my lunch, because I have to watch TV whenever I watch anything. But yeah, another like an interesting thing about this movie, right? Because it's technically like a kaiju film, like a giant monster movie, but it's kind of like a feminist movie too, because there's like a lot of themes about like toxic masculinity and toxic relationships and men doing some not the best things. And it kind of feels like whoever like made this movie was like, they wanted couples to go and they wanted like the girlfriend to like trick the boyfriend into seeing this movie by being like, oh, it's a giant monster movie, but actually it's about like feminism and our feelings type beat. And it's like, anyway, let's get on to what the movie is about. So the movie stars Anne Hathaway, which is, again, crazy considering Anne Hathaway was like one of Hollywood's like it girls for a while. Like she was literally like in Batman as like Catwoman. So it's really crazy to me that Anne Hathaway is in these like smaller roles now, kind of like how Daniel Radcliffe is in a bunch of like random indie movies these days. I'm moving my light slightly. In this movie, she plays a girl whose name is Gloria, which I remember because the rapper Glorilla.
Yeah, Glow, stop a little pussy.
Yeah, Glow. So Gloria is a writer with a bit of like an alcohol problem, and she is not super successful writing right now. And it's implied that her alcohol problem is like a big part of that. And her boyfriend, Tim, who looks almost exactly like PewDiePie. Due to Gloria's apparent issue with partying and being generally irresponsible, Tim breaks up with her. And it seemed Tim is kind of right for breaking up with her, because right after he leaves, a party starts where a bunch of Gloria's friends kind of just rush into their apartment now that Tim is gone. So even though he is a bit lectury, I do think he's kind of, you know, his frustration is a bit understandable at this point. So Tim is like, yeah, I packed your things and it's probably better if you're gone by the time I get back, because, you know, she wasn't really super successful at writing at this time. She has no money, so she moves back to her hometown in New Hampshire, of all places, and she's broke in New Hampshire. Hey, stop it. It's my cat. She's like trying to get out. My door is like here. That's not relevant. She's back in her hometown. She's broke, and she happens to reunite with an old friend of hers back from when she was growing up. His name is, what was his name? Oscar, like Shark Tale, Oscar. So Oscar is an old friend from school and notices that she's having a hard time. So he's like, hey, let me help you out. So he offers her a job at his bar, because he runs a local bar in town. Like he also like helps her out in other ways. Like he gets her a like a couch at one point, which is an important thing to note because it's like at this point it's kind of implied that Oscar has a thing for Gloria, and he goes about it in a very like, you know, stereotypical like nice guy kind of way, and that like he's doing a bunch of favors for her that she didn't really like ask for, and he's being very like, it just gives like nice guy vibes, which isn't a very important part of the plot that will become important later. But for now, he's fine for now. He don't stay fine for long though. Anywho, things are great. Gloria is out partying with herself and all of Oscar's friends, and yeah, good times. And she's drinking again, which is probably not the best idea. But like, she's an adult, she can handle herself, and like, I mean, she's not hurting anyone. So I mean, like, you know, do your thing, go off, queen. So everything's cool. She's out and partying. And then one day Gloria wakes up and out of nowhere on the news, a giant reptile alien monster thing appears in South Korea. And, you know, as anyone would do, Gloria's a little like, oh my God, what is this thing? What happened? What's going on? Are we in a movie? Yes, you are in a movie. And this is like a really interesting part of the movie too, because like the way people react to the giant kaiju that just appears out of like thin air in South Korea is like a repeated like head scratcher for me, because like how people react to the information is weird. Like when Gloria like first finds out about it, she's like freaking out, and what she like freaks out about it and talks to her ex-boyfriend, and her ex-boyfriend is kind of like, wow, you're just figuring this out.
I mean, a giant monster just materialized over Seoul out of nowhere. I mean,
it was crazy, but Gloria, that happened like 9 hours ago. You're just hearing about this.
Why are you making her feel bad about like not knowing the news immediately? Also, people are just really like nonchalant about like a giant monster appearing. The movie takes place in America, and the monster appears in South Korea. But if it can appear out of nothing on one side of the world, what stops it from appearing anywhere else in the world? It's like, you know, as the plot goes on, it's just like a topic of discussion. People are like, whoa, that's crazy. But like, no one's really like freaking out about it. So the creature appears again, and people on the news start to comment on how the monster's motions don't really make sense, and that like, it doesn't like look around at its surroundings, and it doesn't like behave like a normal like living creature would. Gloria hears this and starts piecing together, wait, the creature moves like really similarly to me. So then we get a whole like montage of Gloria like doing Google and like mapping everything out, and eventually she finds out that the creature is like her, like she's controlling the creature. She basically figures out that if she walks onto this specific playground at 8:05 a.m., the monster will appear and basically mimic her motions. I don't know about you, but like if I were to discover that like I was controlling a giant monster that was responsible for like presumably billions in property damage and tons of like people dead, I don't know how I would take that. I sure as hell definitely wouldn't go back to the playground and make the monster spawn again, which is exactly what Gloria does. She tells all her friends and proves that she can like spawn in this giant monster. So she's like dancing, and the military goes and starts launching missiles at the giant monster over in Korea, and she can like feel the missiles on her. So she like goes to punch one of the helicopters to defend herself, and she ends up like destroying it, and she blows up a helicopter. And then she realizes that like, oh, I killed those people. And she has like a bit of a moment to come to terms with like, yeah, you just killed people. You probably also killed people by just spawning into a city, but like, you know, mistakes were made, lessons learned, don't do it again. She does it again. So we cut to the next day, and Gloria is still like, you know, freaking out about the deaths. She doesn't know how many people she actually killed, and she's having like a very moral reaction to finding out what's happened. And Oscar comes in, and Oscar's like, yo, like chill, we gotta talk. The exchange ends with Oscar being like, well, actually I spawned in a giant monster too, which is like, Oscar inadvertently can also spawn in a giant monster. He makes a giant robot that also appears in Korea, and it's just okay, you know, now we got player 2 in the monster kaiju battle. I have no idea where this movie is going, but like I am impressed that it was this like freestyle. That the fact that this could be made, I'm thumbs up. Anyway, where was I? What was I talking about? After the whole thing, Gloria and Oscar go back to the playground because Gloria wants to apologize. But right before she actually decides to like make her monster appear, she and Oscar have a quick conversation where Oscar reveals that he had actually been following Gloria's like career for the last couple years and knew a lot of small details about her. She plays it off as like a joke, but like it's a little, I can't lie, it's like a little creepy that he was like following her so closely. He says it's because like, oh, it's because you went out and did something with your life and you're special. And again, I know at this point he's fine, but like he's not fine later. And it kind of reminds me of Shadis from Attack on Titan with the whole like, oh, I'm not special, so I hate my life, you know? It's super interesting. But yeah, so anyway, Gloria goes down and writes a message in the dirt that says, I'm sorry in Korean. The people are like, oh, yay, she says she's sorry, or the monster says they're sorry, and people are like happy about this. It's a little note here, but it says that people start moving back to their homes in Seoul because like the first couple times the monsters appeared, like people started evacuating. But like, I don't understand why people are still in this city. Like the first time the monster appears, I would have been gone. I think everyone needs to be out of this city until we know that monsters aren't going to appear anymore. And even then, I wouldn't go back to the city like ever. Like that, like Seoul is gone. That is now Kaiju Town. That was one part about the movie that I just didn't get. The fact that people like stayed living in a town where monsters kind of just appear all the time. Even if the monster is friendly, my guy, like you don't want to. Have you seen Power Rangers or Godzilla or King Kong? It's like the monster can be as friendly as you want it to be. That doesn't mean like there's not going to be collateral damage. Anywho, yeah, she apologizes. Yay, good to go. So for the next like little bit of the movie, we kind of start focusing more on Gloria's like home life, like not so much the giant monsters. And this whole like sequence isn't super eventful. Honestly, I don't even really remember all the stuff that was happening. But all of this ends with Gloria hooking up with one of Oscar's friends, who seems like a pretty nice guy. He like asks her how she's doing and has a lot of like green flags. And I think the movie was trying to say, hey, this is actually a good person, unlike the other two male figures in the movie. Because where we're about to go, like it gets much worse. So Oscar pieces together that Gloria had a thing with Joel, and he is mad about it because, of course, he is. You know, but I did all this nice stuff for you. Why don't you love me? Why won't you sleep? You know, like typical like nice guy stuffaroonie. So he decides to take out his newfound like jealousy by going to the playground and spawning in his giant robot monster while he's drunk, which is insane. He's literally killing people over this. Like people are dying. Insane if you ask me. So Gloria goes to confront Oscar about like doing the whole kaiju thing, and being that he's like, you know, a little butthurt about his friend hooking up with Gloria, he's like kind of taunting her. Being like, oh, I'm not the one who went and killed people. That was you. Don't lecture me. Which is like a crazy thing to say. Anyway, Gloria's like, hey, get out. And also she slaps him. Oscar agrees to leave, but he seems to have, he does not like what has transpired. So the next day, everyone is talking about the altercation between their two giant monsters, and people are memeing the slap incident, which I can't lie is kind of funny. The dialogue in this movie is really weird though. It's like, it feels like a college film student wrote a lot of the lines. The news anchor talks in a way that like, not like an actual news anchor would talk, but like a movie news anchor would talk. Gloria is also very like hashtag quirky, which is like, I can't lie, I do like I think Anne Hathaway plays the role well. It's just so weird to me given what this movie is. Anyway, so the internet videos of Oscar getting slapped is now all over the internet, and Oscar is visibly upset by it. Like he is obsessively watching it over and over again to the point where it's kind of making people uncomfortable. And once people start asking him about it, he starts to like lash out at people. He starts bossing Gloria around, which is kind of weird. Even though he does technically own the bar, he's doing it in a kind of way to like kind of flaunt that he has power over her, and it's really uncomfortable to watch. So some of the other people in the bar realize that Oscar is being weird, and they offer to do her job for her, but Oscar's like, no, you can't do it, that's her job. And it's like, he also starts lashing out at other people, telling one of his like supposedly good friends and making fun of him for his supposed drug problem, which is like not cool at all. Like Oscar, like, as just like, he saw that his friend slept with somebody and he just went like completely like he just stopped even trying to be a good person, which is just like a really sad thing that happens in real life. Because like, as a person who likes, you know, both genders, when it comes to like dating guys, it's like, I feel like once they realize that you don't want a relationship with them, it's like a flip is switched and like they're just mean. And I think it comes from a place of like, you know, their ego is hurt and they want you to feel like the same kind of hurt they do. And it's just like throwing a tantrum. And that's what Oscar's doing right now. He found out that the person that he had a crush on didn't reciprocate, and he's mad about it, and he's being really weird. And, you know, combined with the fact that he's an alcoholic and he also has the ability to spawn a giant monster that can literally kill people, is just a terrible mix for a person like this. Yeah, Oscar just does not seem like the greatest of people. The worst person to get superpowers, honestly. So Oscar, continuing his tantrum, decides to berate his friend for his alleged drug problem, and he also forces, like, not really forces, but forces Gloria to drink, which again, she has like an alcohol problem, so it's like really messed up. So after all this happens, Oscar tries to drive home being extremely drunk, and when Gloria tries to stop him from driving drunk and possibly killing people, Oscar like has this really big outburst of like, oh, my life is just as amazing as yours is, like the world doesn't revolve around you. And it's really weird, dude. Like, the guy has like his ego is just so fragile, which is again one of the major themes of this movie, like having fragile masculinity, fragile, like a low self-esteem. I can't believe I just said that. In this movie, he kind of embodies someone being that he has, you know, power over Gloria in that he is her boss, and also his like monster power. It's like, what happens when someone who has this little self-esteem, oh my god, I said it again, this little self-esteem has this much power over people, and it's like, it's never a good combination. After this whole thing, Gloria and Oscar go back to the playground yet again, where they get into an actual fight, which ends up with, you know, Gloria stepping onto the playground even though she didn't want to, which would spawn in her giant monster, and they actually like start like physically fighting with each other, like slaps and punches thrown, and Oscar like ends up like physically hurting her, which is just like, yo, that was not okay. He like pushes her, and it just was not a very good, it was not very cash money of him. Typical nice guy stuff, I guess. Anywho, after the whole altercation or whatever, the people of Korea realize that, oh, because they saw the monsters fight, they're like, oh, maybe the first monster, which is Gloria's monster, is actually on our side, and the robot is actually the bad guy, which is pretty interesting, because I think that's the movie's cue that like Oscar is actually like the villain of this film, which I'm not gonna lie, I liked that as a twist. I liked him being the bad guy. Anyway, lots of stuff happens, and Oscar sends his friend to send over a ton of stuff as a way to apologize to Gloria, which is like, she didn't ask for any of it. He's just like, I don't know. So Gloria goes to Oscar and is like, yo, what's up? And he's like, oh, I'm ashamed of what I did. And she's like, yeah, you should be, because, you know, he definitely should be. Just like, it's just like, even beyond the like getting drunk and throwing a tantrum, it's like, that's strike one. Strike two is like getting into a physical altercation with her over this, and strike three, that's just like, even if you could like forget those two things, he is literally killing people over this. Like, people are dying because he threw a tantrum, which is, I don't know. They make up, I guess. And she's like, yeah, you should be ashamed of yourself, blah, 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 blah. And yeah. So following all this madness, Gloria's ex-boyfriend, Tim, randomly flies into town and is like, hey, how'd you get a job so fast? How have you been doing? And all this good stuff. And Gloria kind of instantly clocks that he's just kind of he's jealous. He realizes that, Gloria's probably been talking to new people and that her life is different. And, Tim feels some kind of way, even though he broke up with her. And something that I want to point out in their altercation is he's like, oh, I'm not jealous, even though you've given me all these reasons to be. And something about that statement is just really, it's kind of a loaded statement. It kind of paints him in this light where he's like this guy who doesn't have jealousy, and he's like this amazing person who forgives Gloria despite allegedly giving him reasons to be jealous, which is like, I don't know, their relationship. I don't know if Gloria's ever done anything or anything like that, but it's kind of weird where it's this weird thing where he's kind of just throwing something in her face to make her feel bad rather than taking the conversation at hand. I don't know. I just think it's a really weird interaction, and Tim just does not seem like a good person. Yeah, really fucking weird if you ask me. Tim continually just tries to make Gloria feel bad, and then when he realizes that Gloria is just kind of done with the conversation, he tries to be no, I'm sorry, please come back. And it's the whole idea of him just berating her and making her feel bad about herself is it's kind of a thing that people do to I don't know how to explain it. It's a thing people do to attach themselves to you, to make the other person feel unworthy. It's I'm the best you're gonna get, and I'm gonna remind you how unworthy you are so that you don't ever think you can leave. And once he kind of realizes that his kind of manipulation isn't working, she's like, hey, I gotta go. And that's when he switches up and something's like, no, I'm sorry, I've been a jerk, blah, 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 blah. And it's I will say that I understand the things he's saying is from a place of jealousy, which doesn't excuse it at all. The idea that people do this thing where it's instead of just saying, hey, yeah, I'm jealous, or hey, yeah, this made me feel some kind of way, they have to deflect and throw all those negative emotions onto the other person. That's really fucked up that he's doing that. But after this whole argument, they end up back at the bar where Oscar is being really weird. He feels some kind of male competition with Tim, where he's yeah, she's a real great help around here, implying that he's she's with me now, which is not true at all. It's just a really weird interaction, if I'm being honest. He makes it even weirder by ordering Gloria around while they're at their tables, which is just dude, that's so odd. And it's I feel one of the weirdest parts about this movie is that the two of them are arguing about Gloria as if either one of them have anything to do with her really right now. And it's just it's a really uncomfortable watch. It's another hard watch. Thank you, Tubi. Oscar ends up having this really weird power trip because he's technically the owner of this bar. So he starts going on this really weird, I can do whatever I want because this is my bar. Oscar thinks he's being really intimidating by being yeah, I'm the alpha around here. I can do whatever I want. But it just comes off as really weird and cringe and gross and odd. The whole thing culminates with him lighting a giant firecracker and destroying his property, and it's just it's just the most that wasn't intimidating at all. That was the most pathetic display of fragile masculinity that I've ever seen. And the entire time Tim is just kind of looking at Oscar being what is this, what is bro on? I think he also thinks this whole thing is weird. He doesn't necessarily he's not looking in intimidation, he's looking in bro is off one type beat. My guy is off the perk for sure. After this whole interaction, there's this weird standoff where Oscar and Gloria are kind of standing together opposed to Tim, and Tim's all right, I'm leaving tomorrow, please come with me. And just the fact that he was begging like that is maybe he was even okay, this guy's actually crazy, please let me get you away from here. What was Oscar on, dog? That was probably one of the weirdest parts about the movie. I thought the thing wasn't even going to be a firecracker. I thought there was going to be some crazy, something crazy in that jar. But so after everything happens, Gloria goes back to her house to I don't know, sleep and figure out her life at this point. And Oscar is in her house. He just got her keys and just let himself in. And when she's what are you doing in my house? He's oh, I just wanted to make sure you didn't call Tim. Just wanted to make sure you didn't do that. Like, he's like, oh yeah, go get some sleep. And like, you know, I'll just be here, just like, you know, get some rest. And then it's just, this guy is deranged. He broke into her house so that she doesn't call her ex-boyfriend. That is, I know a lot of people will be like, oh yeah, like this is a little too far. Most people don't go this far. But like the nice guy, like stereotype, like a lot of them, like maybe they won't necessarily do it, but a lot of them think about doing this kind of stuff. And like with a person like Oscar who like has a bar and like literally has superpowers, it's like they get that bold. It's like once they're bold enough, dog, like the shit like this could happen, which is actually like kind of insane. Like Gloria has a bit of a flashback and thinks back to when she was a kid. And it turns out the way they got their powers is Gloria made like a diorama of Seoul, the same place that their monsters appear at. And Gloria drops it, and Oscar, back when they were kids, stomped on it and like destroyed the project. Gloria, understandably, was very angry about this because why would you destroy my project? And at that very moment, like they both got struck by lightning, and they just their toys and their backpacks at the time were the same monsters that ended up appearing in Seoul. So it's just like that's how they got their powers. So yeah, the powers reveal thing was definitely pretty phoned in because it's like, oh, they got struck by lightning and objects that were around happened to give them these really weird powers. But I think the purpose of this movie wasn't the kaiju monster battles. It was like the relationship and like how she deals with these like guys in her life. After this, there's this whole weird fight sequence where Oscar attacks Gloria and Gloria fights back, and there's this, it's a lot. Oscar is insane. I think that's the moral of the story at this point. So anyway, after the whole fight sequence, they end up running and making it all the way to the playground that spawns their kaiju monsters. And there is another full-on fight where Oscar is just like full-on hitting Gloria, and it's oh my god, this guy is like the worst. So Oscar full-on beats down on Gloria to the point where she's like on the ground and can't really move. And he's like, yeah, if you want to go back with Tim, that's fine. But every single day that you're not here, I'm going to do this. And he proceeds to like stomp with his kaiju monster, like stomp and presumably kill a bunch of people. And it's just like, I have two main takeaways from this. First, why is the city not evacuated? Like I said, there should be no people in this city whatsoever the second the kaijus appear. Like I do not understand. Second, oh my god, Oscar is the worst person ever. And that like his little like temper tantrum that Gloria doesn't want to be with him or doesn't need him or whatever ego trip he is having right now, he is willing to kill actual living people over this. And that is insane. Not a fan. Can't say I'm a fan of this guy. So what Gloria ends up doing is she books a flight to Seoul, where the kaiju monsters appear. And while she's there, she tells Tim to basically, get lost, which is good for her. Tim kind of sucked. So Gloria goes up to where Oscar's kaiju monster is, and what ends up happening is that her monster then appears at the playground back in America. At this point, the viewer is probably like, okay, she's probably gonna like get Tim and do something because she's got a giant monster there. But like not Tim, I call him Tim, why? Oscar can like also do that to her. They're like equals at this point. Like he could also like pick her up and beat her up or whatever. But I don't think Oscar realizes this because he kind of freaks out at the appearance of Gloria's monster, which I guess she had like the element of surprise, so he just didn't know what to do. And Gloria grabs him, which was reflected in his monster also being grabbed, like a voodoo doll hanging over the ocean. Oscar then proceeds to, while he's being grabbed, like threaten her, like, drop me, you, which is absolutely insane considering the position he was in. And then Gloria's like, yeah, okay, and yeets him into like she yeets him into orbit, like Team Rocket's blasting off again style, which is absolutely amazing. Wonderful. The movie kind of ends with Gloria going into a random bar and being like, hey, you want to hear a story? And the bartender's like, yeah, let's do it. And that is colossal. oh my god, it's a movie that had a message that I did not expect. The movie is very it deals with a lot of like feminist issues, a lot of like specifically in relation to like, you know, relationships with men, a lot of things that guys will do in relationships. That I do want to point out, a lot of the things that do happen in this movie can happen with either gender, right? A lot of these things are a lot more common with men, but like a lot of this shit will happen whatever you identify as. I think the title is also kind of interesting when it comes to the topic of toxic masculinity. Size is a really important thing, and it's not just in the sense of like, you know, that kind of size, but like your physical size, like your energy. Men like to feel like they're big, like they're large, like they have power, like they have influence. And I think this movie the title kind of reflects that, how a lot of guys have this need for influence and for power, which can be seen definitely in the case of Oscar. And, you know, when you make them feel small, they do things that make them seem big and they puff up, and it's just not, leads to a lot of temper tantrums, not very good stuff. I think it handles a lot of topics surprisingly well, like better than I thought that it would. The movie is definitely like not a masterpiece. It's like, I do feel like it's definitely really weird, and there were parts where I just didn't feel like paying attention, but I appreciate how ambitious it was. Because at its core, the movie is about Gloria and her relationship with Oscar and Tim, and these two super toxic guys in her life. And I feel like the kaiju monster battle was just like an interesting part to like kind of, I don't know, spice up the story a bit and make it a bit more memorable. And I think, you know, in that regard, it did do its job. I'm not the biggest fan of kaiju monster flicks. They've just never been for me. But, you know, for what it was, I think it did do a good job. I think this actually was a better feminist film than a lot of movies that I can think of off the top of my head. And yeah, no, that is Colossal. Anne Hathaway is a giant kaiju monster who fights the patriarchy, metaphorically or literally. I don't know. I thought it was pretty good. I'm doing this new thing now where like I don't want to rate movies because I feel like movies are more than just like a number scale, and I feel like if I put a rating to a movie, it kind of reduces it to just a number. And I think, I don't know, I want to do something different. So yeah, I thought that for what it was, it did a good job. Would I watch it again? Probably not, but I would definitely bring it up as a conversation point at a party. Like, dude, have you seen that movie where Anne Hathaway is literally a giant monster? Like, I can see myself doing that, but like, I don't know if I tell them to watch it. But yeah, that was Colossal, and my name is O. Thank you for watching, and tune in next time. This is like a new thing I'm trying with videos. Yeah, I'm trying to just get more comfortable talking on camera, so I think I'm going to do a lot of these so I can get more comfortable and just being like, hey, what's up? But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and have yourself a good rest of your day. Bye.